Shalom Aleichem. We are learning the Sicha of Massei, Aleph, the final Sicha that we're going to be learning this year in Chelik Yud Ches. Now, this is based on 3 different Farbrengens, and it's quite interesting what they're based on. So, the first time the Rebbe kind of addresses the subject, and it doesn't play out, what the Rebbe spoke at the time doesn't play out so much in the Sicha that we have, it's more in the Ha'ara. Ha'ara 4 was Shabbos Pashas Matis Massei Tavshin Chav Hey. But then on Hey Of, and Hey Of was 11 months. The last day that Rebbe said Kaddish for his mother, Rebbe Tzimchana, who passed away on Vav Tishrei, so the last day was Hey. So the Rebbe then said the famous Maamar Bila Hamavis LaNetzach, that about the whole reason of death during Galus, etc. And then there was a Farbrengen. Sichas Yom Gimel, it was a Tuesday, Hey Menachem Av Tavshin Chav Hey. And then the Rebbe addressed this Nekuda that we learn in the Sicha. Now, as I was learning the Sicha, something told me I've learned this idea before, and I remember, I don't consider myself by any stretch very knowledgeable in the Rebbe's Torah, but there's some things that you learn and stick in your mind. And what I learned to stick in my mind is 10 years ago, Tafshin Ayin Aleph, we were learning the Maamar Basi Lagani, the first ice, right? It's a 20-year cycle, so Tafshin Ayin Aleph was the beginning of a new cycle. And there are 2 Maamarim. There's the Maamar of Yud Shvat Yud Aleph, the Kabbalah Sanasiyas Maamar that we all know. And then there's a Maamar Yud Shvat Tafshin Lamed Aleph. Now that Sicha, that Maamar, when I learned it, it blew me up. It just blew me up. Why? Because what was the Rebbe saying? And this is an idea that you have to say very delicately. Because what's the Rebbe saying? That even the Averos that we do is Bashkacha Pratis. And you might have just bypassed that Nekuda in the Sicha, which I don't think you can because it's such a startling idea. But ultimately, it's a mind-blowing idea, and it's something that we have to develop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you some of the ideas that the Rebbe quotes, that the Rebbe says in the Maamar. The Rebbe said it in Tafshin Lamed Aleph, and then the Rebbe gave out this Maamar at the first year of the next cycle, Yud Shvat Tafshin Nun Aleph. And it's in Sefer Maamar in Meluket Hey. And in Ois Hey, the Rebbe says that you would think, because the Rebbe is talking about Yerid Tzarech Aliyah, that is only when it happens by Hashem's will, because then you must say that's Yerid Tzarech Aliyah. Mashe Enkein, however, Yerida that happens through Chet, which is Hepech, that's Ne'el Yoin, because we used our B'Koyach HaBechira and we chose to go against Hashem. You would think that Yerida is not L'Tzarech Aliyah. Behagam, and even though it's not shaykh that the bechira of the person should hold up the kavanah dir b'tachteinim, and the bechira of the person only establishes the quickness of the kavanah being fulfilled, the quickness of Mashiach. So we see that there's a power in the chet that the chet at least does for a small amount of time. So we see that, yes, it doesn't push off the thing indefinitely, but it does push it off for time, so it has power. So how can you say that the hamshacha lemata le'achrei hasiluk, the hamshacha that comes down here after we pushed Shechina up, because remember, what's Basi Lagani talking about? Adam Arishon with his chet and Cain, etc., they pushed it up. Who says that leads to Hashgacha Pratis, that is Hashgacha Pratis, and it leads to Yerid Tzarech Aliyah? And the Inyan is, it says in the Medrash, on the Pasuk, Noida Lila Bnei Adam, the Hashem, it's how awesome is the not trick, the strategy, the manipulation on the person. Says the Medrash, Alila nitna leba Adam Arishan had an Alila against him, and he brought death into the world by eating the chet from the Eitzadas. We know that the Torah came before the world 2,000 years, and the Torah already says, so there was already an Nekuda of death. So Adam Arishan did not create death, but rather he activated something that was already in the plan. And the Alter Rebbe, in the Mittel Rebbe explains And then in the other 41, in the Maamar, the Rebbe shows many, many sources. I didn't open all the sources, but I opened one of the sources in Shadei Tshuva of the Mittler Rebbe, and he uses these words. Interesting, there's a sefer called Shadei Tshuva. In it is a section called Shad HaBechira. Says the Rebbe like this, the Mittler Rebbe, that the tzaddikim, what they do, lo yahya mitzad koyach atzmam, it wasn't only mitzad their koyach, that mitzad ezel mumayla, but rather they got help from above. Maamar, like it says, and we quoted in the in Tanya Perek Yud Gimel, Yitzei Shaladam Iskamer, love that the Yetzer Hara of a person goes against him, and if Hashem didn't help him, you wouldn't survive. But then he uses big words. V'chein loy rishas harasha mitzad atzmai. The evil of the Rasha is not from himself, but rather they help him. Even though everything's dependent on Bechira, even the Bechira itself has an Ezer. Everything is according to the divine will. And that the Ratzon Elyon is based on the Tainug Elyon, Hashem's pleasure and desire. How Hashem exactly wants that we should be mavar, that we should elevate the apach, the 288 sparks. These things be elevated, these things have to be brought down. Yeah, so, and then he finishes off by saying, like it says in somewhere else regarding im tzadakta matitin, we know this from the Bar Mitzvah Maamar, if you did righteousness, what are you going to give him? And over there it explains, what you did, your tzidkus is not yours. In other words, don't give yourself full credit for the mitzvahs that you did, the tzaddik you became, and don't give yourself full discredit for the dasha. It doesn't mean don't take accountability, and that's why we said it's a very, very delicate idea. But nevertheless, the Rebbe says in the Maamar, the Mevar Ad Matzai, the Mittler Rebbe explained, that the Mittler Rebbe is mechadish in Torah's Chaim, that the fact that Adam Rishon had this alila that happened on him is not only that he brought death, but the chet atzmai, not only the cause of the effect of his sin was planned, the sin itself. That sometimes the Yetzer Hara overcomes us, but it's because the Yetzer Hara was pushing him and pulling him to go towards that sin. The Rebbe says, but there's also Ezer Milamayla. The Rebbe says the Ezer Milamayla, the help from above to that evil is getting against your good, and so too the good that you have to overcome your evil, who moved on Adam, it's separate from a person, but you don't feel it. I'm not sure I understand exactly what that means, but it's happening, but you don't necessarily feel it, so therefore you still have choice. The fact that you could choose then good or evil, and then the Rebbe highlights chavshis, free choice. So then the Rebbe wraps it up, and because the Yeridan Olam, the downgrade that the world got because the Shechina left, that came to the Chet Sadas, even though the Chet is Hepech HaRatzon, but it was Bikavana. You must say that you did a tzarech aliyah, because everything that the Eibush does, you did a tzarech aliyah, because Amshachas Ikar Shechina that will be after the Siluk will be greater. Now, you have to say this. In other words, the Rebbe says it clearly in some mind-blowing idea, but based on the whole Basi Lagani Yud Aleph, you're saying that sins that we did was all part of the plan, so that we could bring the Shechina down here, and that our job is to was it part of the plan or was it malfunction of the plan? Because it's not sins that Hashem did, it's not things that pain that Hashem did. He didn't remove the Shechina by his choice, we activated it. Now, this is a delicate idea, but it's a very important idea, and I'll tell you why. I can only talk why it's talking to me so powerfully. Because we live in difficult times. We live in times that we're down. We live in times that some of us really struggle with addictions and struggle with Shmir Seinayim and struggle with whatever issues we have, our phone, our computer, our das, our yens. It doesn't justify us failing. But the fact that we are in a situation right now that we fail is planned. We have to fight, but we are not a failure. Hashem designed this world. He designed us to be in this time to deal with these nisyonis. I'm right now talking to you in South Africa. We're in the midst of a third lockdown. Just before I went on recording, I heard about another Yid, the Eibishter Shikin Mafur Shlema, Alon Ben Miriam, in his young 50s, Nebuch, with a heart attack after COVID. We're living through difficult times, very difficult times. But we have to remember what the Rebbe talks about in this Sicha. The Mittel Rebbe is mevar baruka as das was lipom im goyver adadi yitzhar la aslam v'yechta is as der far v'lamayla hisisayol of yitzhar la v'yay lechet zeh. Obviously, it's not a state of chet as the Rebbe spoke about, and there's many other fascinating nekudas. I mean, this whole Sicha is a mind-blowing Sicha on the whole journey of life. You go through Ha'ara 40, there's a lot of insights, and you could see Ha'aris and Shuli Hagilion and stuff, but let's finish off with what the Rebbe said, the words, as the ganze Kavala V'chayli, it's clear that the whole thing of the Chayli, COVID, is nor kedei as beim Melech soll zukommen die Meile von Chayla shen Isrape. In an Eifen von Zdeines Nasle Chizachis turns over. Und nicht nur mikanu lahaber, nor in dem Eifen was necker, when Mitchila the sin goes disappears. Was das spet sich Eiftam begali, b'shleimus, this is going to be accomplished when Mashiach comes, when it will be hayu chayzdin, will be the complete return. Niskala varing mitzeis Hashemesh b'gvodasi, the sun will totally shine. Amitis upnimius from the Massei in Golos, we're finally going to understand what we've been through and why we've been through it.